Greetings, friends. Oz here, and as you can see, it is a lovely cloudy day on planet Oz. And it's been a little while since I made a film, so I figured with this one, let's go right to the core of it. Let's go right to the origin of the universe and talk about where this all came from. Where did all the stuff come from? How did we get something from nothing? And I'm going to work this through today in using a very reason-based, reason-focused look at the debate between the material universe theory and the creator theory. And the reason I want to do it this way is because the truths are absolute. So you've got plenty of books, plenty of websites, plenty of videos of people talking about these truths, and we know that the underlying truths are the same, but what is different and what is unique and what might bring someone to planet Oz is the articulation. We're all doing that. I do it too. We seek the kind of articulation that resonates with us, and others may not for whatever reason. But it's okay, because we're all trying to get at these core truths, and so reason and using reason, and I'm going to use reason for this film because I have always been possessed of a very reason-focused mind. Reason is how I lived many years in the material universe theory, and I reasoned my way to understanding it. And sometimes when people come to an esoteric or a spiritual place, and it's like others might look at them and say, oh, they abandoned reason, and now they've adopted woo-woo stuff, But for me, that has never been the case. I have continued to reason, and I have reasoned my way through these things and into these things and through these puzzles. And so I still find my reason-based focus incredibly valuable. And so that's what I'm going to appeal to your free will. If you like this articulation, if it resonates with you, then maybe it's of value. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the material universe theory and the creator theory. And so we'll look at these two, and we will reason our way through it and see if one seems more compelling or resonates better than the other one. So to begin with, I would start where I would probably start if I were a debate moderator. I would have, the material universe person there, the creator theory person there, and I would say, how about if we start here? Let's start with an infinity of nothingness. So I feel like that would be an agreeable place, because the big question at the root of this is, where did all this come from? Where did all the stuff come from? If we want to answer that question, we got to go back to the point before there was stuff. If we go back to some point where there was stuff, we haven't gotten there yet, right? We can't explain where this all came from. So let's just say that it is accepted between the two parties of the debate that that we are going to begin with infinite nothingness and ask, where did this all come from? How did we get something from nothing? How did we get this entire universe? How did we get the creation? How did we get here? And we're going to use reason to do it. So let's start with the material universe theory. So the material universe theory is typically science and the processes of explaining this, they don't really go further back than the Big Bang. Certainly, if you know of a compelling theory that is before the Big Bang of the material universe, I would be interested to know it. Please comment, and I would love to read something like that. But as far as I know, it tends to go back to the Big Bang, and the Big Bang is considered as far back as we can go, more or less, in our understanding. And so, of course, we all learn this in school. There emerged from the infinite nothingness a singularity that then exploded outward with all of the material needed to create the material universe as we know it, and it has been spreading out and evolving for at least billions or trillions of years, and ultimately it comes to manifest in these complex forms that we observe all around us. And that's basically how it works in a nutshell. That's basically the material universe theory. And I'm not sure how to really frame that. In my mind, it's framed as the magical dot theory, and not really meant to be condescending of the theory. It's just like, I just don't know what else it could possibly be. It's a magical dot. From an infinite nothingness appeared a magical dot that contained all of the material necessary to create the entire universe, and then it exploded out. And so if you are to challenge the theory and ask, where did that come from, we'll be told, well, some questions aren't answerable, but we can answer as far back as that, and we feel confident that that's how it started, and so that's as far back as we go, and I guess the rest is a mystery. It should be mentioned here, though, that it's not quite as simple as just a magical dot forming and then exploding, because this explosion has to explode through something. It has to travel through and intermix and change and turn into cloud nebulas and stars and planets and all this stuff. It does that not because it exploded into nothing. It does that because it exploded through a medium. You need a medium to travel through, a medium to interact with. And this medium we would know as space. So you think about space and sometimes when we're first learning it and we're exposed to it or we're looking up at it, we might think it's nothing. But space is absolutely not nothing. Space is incredibly dense energy. And so it needs to be noted that if we're going to look at and accept the material universe theory, we have to accept that not only did this magical dot come to be from an infinite nothingness, but also the entire universe of energy, of space, the medium through which this has all traveled, had to also spontaneously emerge from nothingness in order to allow this all to happen in the way that we understand it. So clearly the material universe theory leaves us with some questions. And I'm doing this through a reasoned focus, reason-minded, and I'm going to approach the creator theory in the same way. It's going to be reasoned. So let's look at that. The creator theory works differently. The creator theory suggests that from an infinite nothingness awakened an awareness or a consciousness. Now I will insert here that how this happened and why this happened is a question that even the Buddha says is unanswerable, and advises us not to tangle with it too much. It's hard to resist when you're reason-minded, but nonetheless, the Buddha would say it can't be answered, and if the Buddha couldn't figure it out, I don't think I have much chance of figuring it out. So, full disclosure, there is a question, there is something that is unanswered. Was this awareness always in existence, or did it awaken at some point? And if so, why did that happen? How did that happen? Unanswerable. So you in fairness, you do have unanswerables on both sides. Where did the magical dot come from? Where did the awareness come from? These are both puzzles. However, if we are using our reason-based mind and we are reasoning through this, we might look at it this way. The material universe requires that from an infinite nothingness, this magical dot, and all of this material came to be. The creator theory is saying that from an infinite nothingness, a consciousness emerged. And as we know, if you noodle through it, reason through it a little bit, consciousness is both infinite and made of nothing. So already, personally, I would see an advantage toward the creator theory, because what we are talking about in that context is something coming from nothing, an infinite nothing, but that something is also infinite and also made of nothing. Therefore, this infinite consciousness is made from the same stuff of which it was created out of. Nothing becomes nothing. And of course, it's a big difference when we are in the experience of consciousness. But nonetheless, when we look back at these questions and we ask ourselves, it's fair to debate which one of them is true and accept that something must be true, because the material universe theory will say, we live in a material universe, therefore material is self-evident. If there's problems with the explanation, that's fine, but it's self-evident that we're here, so it must be something. Consciousness works the same way. It is self-evident that consciousness became, at some point, or always was, but we know that there is consciousness because we have it. We are consciousness, and we know it to be true just by introspection. So once you arrive at this point in time, I think the best way to reason this through is to look at it as if we are that consciousness. So I'll be that consciousness for a few minutes here, and I will reason through what I would do, how I would go about it, and you can make your assessment as to whether or not this is more reasonable than the material universe theory. And so basically it would work like this. From infinite nothingness, I suddenly awaken. And so now there's still effectively nothing, but now I'm awake and I'm aware, and I'm amid a sea of nothingness. I have no eyes to see anything, I have no hands to make anything, and I have no material to make anything out of. I'm just aware, and I'm aware that I'm aware. So I might be in this state for a while. I might be asking myself how I got here. There wouldn't be anyone around to answer that question, so I would be kind of at a loss. And without anything to do or look at or form or any understanding of form, I've never seen a form, I don't know what a form is, but I can do the one thing that we know consciousness can do, I can imagine. So given however many years this would be as we would measure time in this space, I would start imagining, and I would start imagining, and I would imagine, and eventually I would imagine some sort of form. Let's say a sphere. A sphere is a nice place to start. It looks the same from all angles. It kind of seems like something you might logically, reasonably think of first. So you imagine this sphere. You might imagine that this is a building block of some sort. You can imagine how thrilled I was when I first imagined this sphere, because it's like, wow, I've been here in infinite nothingness without any form, and now I can actually see something and look at it. And because we know the nature of our own consciousness, we can know what the consciousness would do. The consciousness would seek, the consciousness would evolve, the consciousness would grow, the consciousness would be active. So of course it wouldn't just sit there in infinite nothingness, it would start doing something with this infinite consciousness. It would imagine form. So it imagines form, and then it imagines more form, and well, I was doing this as me. So I imagine that form, and then I imagine other things, and then I make it more complex, and eventually I refine it to the point where I can imagine it so clearly that I have imagined a rock. And now we have stuff. So the next thing, the next logical place to go, or the place that that the counterpart on the side of the material universe might say, well, okay, you imagined a rock, but you still haven't solved the problem of how to manifest it. So it's one thing to say a creator mind imagined all of this stuff, but to make it manifest is another challenge, because where did the material come from to manifest the rock? How did that process happen? How do we solidify it in that way? And the answer, according to this theory, is that never happened. So stay with me for a minute here. Now I've imagined a rock. Maybe I'll imagine 1 million or 1 trillion more rocks, but consciousness keeps expanding. I want to keep thinking of new and different things. I want to challenge myself. I want to make this better, and more beautiful, and more intricate. So then I imagine a fluid substance, water. I imagine, that the atmosphere, the air moves around. I can move these things. I imagine fire. I imagine these different elements. And if I mix them all together, probably nothing happens. It would be like laying translucent photographs on top of each other. They would just stack there, and I would just be looking at them all together. Unless I imagine rules as to how they would interact. So, for example, if you were to imagine a ball, and then you imagine a wall, you could imagine the ball flying right through the wall. Why wouldn't it? It's all figments of your imagination. But if you wanted to, you could imagine the scenario differently. You could imagine that the ball is flexible and the wall is solid, and therefore there are rules that when something flexible meets something solid, it's going to bounce off, and all of a sudden you have physics. Not because physics evolved over billions of years through a material universe, but because I imagined them. I have imagined the rules that govern how my imagining works. And so if I do that, I could then take the rock I've imagined, and the water, and the fire, and the air, and I could create a giant sphere out of these elements. And I'm imagining this all. But because I've imagined rules that govern how it works, I see that it's working according to the rules as I imagined them. The water is flowing down the mountain. The rock displaces the water when it falls in it. The air blows across the water, creating ripples. So all of these are in accordance with the rules that I have imagined. And you can observe this for yourself firsthand when you think about what happens when you dream. If you have a dream, you are wholly creating an entire world with your consciousness and then acting as a participant within it. And a lot of us have had dreams where the laws of physics are defied, where the room is suddenly, we're somewhere else, and all of a sudden sometimes we can fly or survive a big fall or something like that doesn't make sense. And yet, unless you're a lucid dreamer, you might puzzle at that doesn't make sense, but you just take it in stride and you keep going on. You don't suddenly go, oh, wait a minute, I'm dreaming. This must be a dream. It's defying the laws of physics. That's when we make an exception to the rule. But when you think about it, a lot of times when you're dreaming, you're walking around in your home, you're walking around down the street, you're walking on the surface of the planet. Why? Why? Gravity is holding you down in a dream? It really doesn't make any sense. It should be the case that when we dream, we all fly through infinity and travel the cosmos and go everywhere and do everything, but we don't do that. We have accepted rules of consciousness. We've accepted them into our reality. We accept them as true, and therefore, when we create our own reality and we walk around in it in a dream, we end up also taking not only the buildings, not only our own form and appearance, but also the rules. Those rules are existing in a pure state of consciousness while you're dreaming. And yet, they're working, they're functioning, we're adhering to it, and in the moment, we don't know any difference between what the dream is and where we are versus where we are when we wake up. It's in the moment, it's totally real to us because we are in a completed holistic state of consciousness where we've created the world and the rules. So once this sphere is created and these things are interacting and these elements are interacting, I might want to complicate this further or enhance it further by seeing things moving around, jumping, hopping, interacting, forms that act as though they have autonomy. In truth, they don't. I am imagining every single one of them, and I'm imagining every single thing that every single one of them does, but it's still cool to look at. And so as a consciousness, entertaining myself, evolving myself, learning about myself through pure imagination over trillions of years, let's say, this is something that might reasonably evolve out of that process. So now I'm imagining these forms. And what I could do then, again, this, you can check this with your own reason. Would you do this if you were this infinite consciousness? What you could do next is you could say, I could collapse my infinite omniscient perspective down to a single perspective, and then I could occupy one of those forms within this world that I've built, and then I could wander around inside my own imagining as if I'm really there, as if I'm walking through it, experiencing it. And in this way, it would feel absolutely real. No less real than a dream or a hallucination or any of these things. It would be a vividly real experience. And if I were, say, a bird, then I might fly around, I might go over the mountains, I might dive in the sea, I might explore all this stuff. And if, for example, a volcano were going to erupt, and I was the bird and I wanted to see that, I could always be there in advance of it happening because I always know everything that's happening all the time because it is all one consciousness. But after enough evolution and enough experience, I might desire surprise. I might want to be surprised by what I see. I might feel like the experience were more immersive if I didn't know everything that was going to happen at every moment. So in that case, what I could do then is I could imagine a veil of consciousness, a veil of confusion, with which I could surround this bird, and then when I'm flying around inside this veil of consciousness, that is kind of, it's an illusion, but it is cutting me off from the grander whole. It's cutting me off from the understanding of everything and everything that's going to happen. And once I'm inside there, then I don't know. And when I'm flying past a mountain and it all of a sudden explodes into a volcano, I would be surprised. And so that would be yet another victory of my creation as this infinite consciousness. And again, this is all still happening inside my own imagination. I have never manifest anything. So now I see that happen, and then there's surprise. If I create another one of these individuations, let's say another bird, and I put that bird also inside a similar type of veil of confusion, then there is the case that now one bird can see another bird and have this feeling that I am not alone. Because if we are to know the creation and the creator by way of our own consciousness, it's reasonable to believe that a feeling of aloneness might be possible. It might be perceived, or perhaps it's perceived and it's blissful, perhaps it's perceived and one doesn't feel alone, but nonetheless, the experience of not being alone, of being something and having the company of something else and not knowing what that other thing is going to do, not knowing how it's going to behave, being surprised by it. These are all the things that lead to our understanding of unique personality. And we have unique personality and unique character. And those that we love and interact with, they surprise us. We don't know what they're going to do all the time. And we can't snap our fingers and make anyone we want fall in love with us the moment we want. It actually is, this is free will. This is essentially, this would be the creator creating free will by creating an illusory subset of its own consciousness, a little spark that's wrapped in this veil of confusion. That entity, that is the birth of free will, and so that free will gives rise to all of the magic and all of the surprise and all of the interest that we experience in this creation, according to the creator theory. And it also plays a part in love, that we can't just snap our fingers and make anybody love us or make anybody be our friend or anything like that. It is what's beautiful about it is the free will of one choosing and the free will of the other choosing to be together in this way. That is a magical thing that could only be experienced if we had done all of this. It can't be experienced just being the one infinite consciousness all the time. So this again is using reason, using our own consciousness. What would we do? That's all we have to ask, and we can reason our way through this. And so now these two entities can meet each other, be surprised by each other, enjoy the uniqueness of each other, and all of that is possible because of the way that we've imagined this and the way that we've veiled consciousness, veiled little sparks of consciousness that in truth are never separate from the one that we are, but nonetheless it is an exercise in understanding who we are as that infinite creator intelligence by not only experiencing being finite, having a limited perspective, being vulnerable, death, mortality. All of these things are illusions, all created within a bigger illusion, a bigger imagining, all for the purpose of understanding what we truly are. And it can be done from the individuated perspective, or it can be done from the omniscient perspective, looking upon the creation, because there's an illusory veil that separates the form from us. There is also an illusory veil, we might presume, that separates us from the forms, not in truth, not in absolute truth, but for the exercise of the illusion. I might want to also be surprised by all that is going on. I want that free will because I want those individuations to surprise me with what they do. I don't have to worry about them getting into trouble. There's nothing they can do to truly cause trouble. Not in the absolute way. Not in the absolute way when everything is imagined and it's all an imagining and every single spark is eternal and always, for all time, never separated from me. Then truly there isn't anything that happens within this material realm that actually means anything or harms anything or destroys anything. At worst, it creates suffering, and that suffering ultimately acts as catalyst, leading us toward absolute truths, leading us toward understanding. In other words, leading us back to unification with the Creator. It is only by getting lost in the illusion that we would seek a path out of it and pursue it. So the last little bit of this I'll add on here is that after enough experience of doing this, you might ask, well, why would you ever want to leave? Why would you ever want to imagine anything? Why would you ever want to be anything but in an absolute infinite state of love and peace and joy and harmony and unity, all of those things we imagine to be the state of the Creator? Why would you leave that? Well, if we've created this whole universe using our own consciousness and reason as a measure for why it exists and how it exists, then you might say one of our motivations for doing all this could have simply been boredom. If you ask me, boredom is the condition of a consciousness not expanding. Think about any time you've been involved in anything where your consciousness was expanding. Were you bored? That probably was not boring. Boredom happens when you're not doing that, and you're sitting idly, and you're without imagining, without whatever, just bored. So if boredom is a truth of consciousness, then we might imagine that a lot of this was created out of, at least to an extent, boredom. There would be curiosity, love, interest, imagining. All of this stuff would contribute to these reasons as well. But sorry about the noise over there. But it might be boredom. So if boredom is something that we experience and therefore can infer that an infinite consciousness would experience this also, then another thing we might experience is fatigue. So fatigue in the sense of consciousness would manifest as a lack of appreciation. So, for example, when we get something new, a new gadget, a new toy, a new experience, something that we're excited about, we are really stimulated by it. It's amazing. There's excitement, there's energy, there's drive. But what happens after months or years? What happens to that thing? Do you still wake up and engage with that same toy, that same gadget, with all of the excitement and vigor you had the first day? No. We say that the novelty has worn off. So in a sense, we become fatigued with it, and that fatigue turns into a lack of appreciation, a lack of reverence for this thing that we once enjoyed, or this feeling that we once had, or this person that we were with. We allow ourselves to fatigue. And sometimes the cure for that fatigue is this old adage, you don't know what you got until it's gone. So, for example, if you've been with someone, you're spending a lot of time with this person, you do this for a long time, you maybe get to the point where you start to take it for granted. But then all of a sudden you're going away on vacation, or you leave for a while, people get busy and whatever, and that contact is lost for a stretch of time. And what happens when you get back together? You remember how amazing it was when you first met. You imagine, or you remember all of these things about this other person that you had kind of forgotten about in the absence. You regain and renew an appreciation for this relationship, or the thing that you pull out of the closet that has meant so much to you, but you haven't seen it in years. You pull it out and then you appreciate it again because you had an opportunity to forget. So there is something unique about the forgetting toward the service of being able to remember and appreciate again. That remembering is an experience unto itself, a very valuable one, a beautiful one. And so, difficult as it might be to imagine, becoming fatigued by a perfect state of bliss and peace and joy and harmony and unity. We are a consciousness, and we might wonder if this one unified grand consciousness would experience this also. And we might say that by virtue of the fact that we are here, it could be argued, using reason, that that fatigue is self-evident, or at least this creator wants both the possibility to exist in that state for all time, but also to experience forgetting it toward the ultimate purpose of remembering it again, and to experience what it feels like to forget for a while, to believe for a while that one is finite, mortal, vulnerable, and imperfect. There might be value in experiencing that when you know that inevitably there is nowhere to go, there is nowhere to escape the absolute truth. You can wander around, you can be lost, you can explore it. You can explore it for millions of years. You can keep exploring, but eventually the suffering that comes with that will wear on every single consciousness. We know that. All of us have suffered, and all of us look for relief from suffering. So if suffering is only possible in a finite, mortal, vulnerable, imperfect state, then it seems mathematically inevitable that every single experiencer of this illusion, every experiencer of the suffering, every little subset of imagination wandering around within the imagining is going to eventually meet their threshold where enough suffering is enough. And that will be the time, that will be the moment that the seeking begins, the seeking of the way out of the illusion and the seeking of the return to unity. That pathway is always there. It will always be available. There's nothing anyone can do ever that will stop that from being there. And let's give the material experience its fair due here. It did all come about through reason. Everything that I've described here are reasonable things that one might think, and reasonable reasons why one might create the entirety of this illusion. So it has a purpose. It's here for a reason. And not for nothing, it can be fun. There is a lot of joy to be had. There is a lot of amazing experience. There is a lot of value in the individuated experience of consciousness from inside it, wandering around inside the imagination. It offers a lot. And but what it doesn't offer is infinity, immortality, invulnerability, and perfection. And so eventually, we fatigue on the material experience as well. We fatigue on the suffering that has to come with the rest of the illusion in order for us to experience it. And so ultimately, this is all, you could say, in divine order, that this leads us this way. We have these experiences, and then ultimately we become fatigued by the suffering and other aspects of the illusion, and we seek the pathway back, which is always there. And through consciousness, we create mental models exactly like the one that I'm laying out here in this film. We create these mental models because everything is consciousness. So when we construct something out of consciousness, it is every bit as real as the rock and the water and the fire and the air, because all of those things also are creations of consciousness. The rules are created. The material universe never manifests according to this creator theory. It is all an epic imagining, an epic hallucination, an epic dream, however you want to think about it. But this is all exists for a purpose, both for us to explore away from the creator toward separation, and then once we make that decision to seek the pathway back, we are rewarded and rewarded and rewarded by affirmations and remembering of who and what we truly are. So Earlier in this film, when I started talking about, well, let's go back and think how the creator would think, and let's imagine what the creator would imagine. And I said, let's say that's me. Well, if you followed this far along, in fact, it is me. In fact, I am that creator, and I was that creator. Of course, this also means you are too. You are both the dreamer and the dream. You are both the Imagineer of all that we see, as well as the participant within it. You are all things, I am all things, because everything is one. It is one thing, one imagining from one incredibly creative mind that we may be a little bit cut off from it, we may be behind the veil, we might have these illusions, but I would just make this case in appealing to reason so that per your free will, you can weigh these two things reasonably. Basically, a dot full of material exploding through a material energetic space to create all this without an answer, or an awakening of awareness from infinite nothing, also made of infinite nothing, but yet something, because it is a consciousness. But nonetheless, we don't have an answer to how that awakening happened. But that really, when it comes to the creator theory, that's really the only question. I think as I've expressed it here, hopefully it was thorough in my articulation, a reason-based articulation that hopefully appeals to some, and those who watch planetOZ films, getting to know how I kind of approach these things, that should possibly be of value, possibly resonate with you all. And yeah, if you've landed on the side of creator theory, you are the infinite creator. You are the one who imagined the entirety of all that we see, and you are experiencing an illusion, a dream, a dream of being mortal, a dream of having a limited single perspective, a dream of being vulnerable, a dream of being anything other than perfect. But the remembering makes it worth it. So that's what I got for you today. Love and light to you all, friends. Signing off from planetOZ.